Naruto exclusive videos Lemon come out on my Boosty. You can watch and subscribe. Link in the description, like the video and write a comment. Enjoy watching. Description: it is clear to everyone that Naruto cannot live without adventures. But life after the war turned out in such a way that the famous blonde had to gather dust, gnawing on the granite of science, trampling her way to her dream. Boredom. True, it turned out that adventures also cannot live without Naruto. Take this, sign for it. The quest called Fall on Tobirama's Head begins. And in this set with Tobirama there are also Hashirama and Madara. Now it will definitely not be boring. Chapter 40. Life became unbearable. Tobirama was going crazy. A couple of days without Naruto were enough for him to come to the conclusion that he didn't care about her secrets. He would forgive her everything, as long as she was near. He looked for her in every passerby. Paranoidly tracked chakra, looking for where she was and with whom. For the first time in his life, he was terribly envious of his brother, who fluttered around Mito, causing his wife to smile warmly and look full of tenderness. "You need to unwind," Hashirama said, looking up at his brother, who was too thoughtful and gloomy. In Hashirama's opinion, Tobirama was tormented by the thought of his choice. The younger Senju regretted allowing Madara to be the leader. That's why his brother looked so depressed. Why? What he needed was unavailable now. And this irritated Tobirama more than ever. Only a miracle kept him at a distance from Naruto. He, as promised, gave her time to think and prepare for the conversation that would definitely shake his world again. The anxiety only grew stronger day by day, preventing him from breathing calmly. "You're tense." Hashirama measured him with a worried look. "And not like usual," he explained, preventing any objections. "What happened?" Tobirama clenched his teeth, looking down. He was not going to talk about it. He would cope with his feelings on his own. Mito looked at him with hidden bitterness, as if she understood the reason, but out of respect for his feelings, she kept silent. She only shook her head regretfully. "Darling!" She placed her hand on her husband's shoulder, switching Hashirama's attention to herself. "Grandfather sent a letter. The barrier is ready." "That's great!" Hashirama beamed, quickly switching over. His brother's problems faded into the background. Tobirama, to his horror, did not share the joy of the good news. "A barrier that protects the entire village. I thought it was impossible, but it is real," Hashirama burst out enthusiastically, making Mito smile again. "Uzumaki can do anything," Mito laughed easily and naturally, enjoying her husband's childishly enthusiastic reaction. Tobirama agreed with her. Uzumaki could do anything, including breaking him. And his affection for her was not the machinations of hormones. It was deeper and more serious. That's why it was more destructive. "Tobirama, do you want to visit Yuzushio?" Hashirama again turned all his attention to his brother. If he did not want to involve him in his troubles, then let him unwind, switching to something else. A change of scenery could help. "No," he said as if cutting off. What if Naruto decided to talk to him any minute, and he was not there? But his head understood that this was an excellent option to forget for a while from the experiences that were eating away at him from within. "Tobirama, I can't, just like Mito." Senju Sr. hugged his wife around the waist, placing his wide and dark palm on her stomach. Tobirama realized that Uzumaki had dedicated her husband to her delicate situation. According to his calculations, in about 7 months there would be a replenishment in the Senju clan. Madara should be in the village. The daimyo can come here at any moment to ceremoniously appoint Uchiha as the head of the village. "Toka," Tobirama reminded him of his cousin. They could trust her enough to appoint her to such a serious mission. He kept silent about Naruto. He would not allow her to be sent. "She went on reconnaissance. While you were away, news began to arrive about a series of UBs on the border. She's investigating the case." Hashirama took a sip of green tea, squinting with pleasure. He had a good life. The sight of his happy brother was starting to make him angry. Tobirama realized that things were bad with him. Really bad. He was so wound up, upset, and angry that he was ready to snap at Hashirama, who hadn't even given him a reason to do so. Okay, Tobirama agreed. Perhaps he needed it. Maybe you could take Naruto with you. At least she could see the place where her mother was born, Mito asked carefully and as unobtrusively as possible. It was surprising that his daughter-in-law had seen much more than his own brother. And Tobirama hardly communicated with her. Perhaps it was because she was a woman, and they had a sense of matters of the heart? She can't, Hashirama realized. Madara appointed her as his assistant and doesn't let her out of his sight. The elder Senju beamed, somehow pleased. Tobirama, remembering his brother's stupid plan to force Naruto Madara, not only as an object for surveillance, flared up. Jealousy and anger were closely intertwined. Gritting his teeth, he impatiently and abruptly put the unfinished tea on the low table, which was unusually bitter. Yes, his whole life in an instant became bitter to the taste. He restrained himself from rash actions only by force. Naruto TSL him. And she hugged him. She reciprocated his feelings. And Madara didn't give a damn about Uzumaki. She was an annoying misunderstanding for him, Tobirama reminded himself. Hashirama's plan was doomed to failure. But Madara's sophisticated revenge was bearing fruit. And the fact that Madara was taking revenge on him like that was very likely. The Uchiha's eyes saw much more than Hashirama's. I can handle it alone, Tobirama said coldly, pursing his lips, and walked out. Get ready. He was leaving immediately. Naruto tiredly massaged the bridge of her nose with her fingers. Not a single sensible thought. So how could she explain to Tobirama that she was from the future? And that inside her was a demon fox, which everyone here considered just a fairy tale. There was no way to prepare for that. She tried to think in terms of the local era, and the results were disastrous. Either death or imprisonment. Uzumaki did not rule out the possibility that she was simply winding herself up, since she was driven by the fear of the unknown. But she did not rule out the terrible consequences of her decision to be extremely honest, at least with Tobirama. Let me talk to him. I can be convincing. Kurama was already tired of throwing his cage around. No. Imagining this picture, she shook her head. Most likely, Kyubi would simply blackmail and threaten, pressuring her with his authority and instilling fear. And she wanted to avoid that. That way, she would definitely be perceived as a threat. I'll pretend to be white and fluffy, Kurama insisted, grinning. Naruto laughed quietly. But no matter how hard Kurama tried to portray innocence itself in her subconscious, it was coming out terribly bad. Such a giant could inspire fear with his size alone. And if this same giant also had 2 rows of sharp white teeth, 24 deadly claws, and 9 tails, their presence would in no way match the appearance of a beaten dog. And it would not evoke pity and compassion, but completely different feelings. Thank you? But it's not worth it. Any other ideas? Naruto nervously bit her finger, feeling despair creeping up on her. She already felt lousy. The forced separation from Tobirama was not affecting her in the best way. Melancholy and bitterness settled in her chest. Memories of the PC and hugs made her physically hurt. The gentle tremor and exciting warmth almost instantly turned into cold, heavy and prickly cobblestones, freezing her entire insides. I wanted to send everything to the abyss, to renounce my own words and cowardly allow myself to be happy, and to sort out the problems as they came. But that would be unfair to Tobirama. Hiding Kurama would be a knife in the back. Just talk to him. Tell him honestly how it all is, and show me. Prove to him that I am under your control and not dangerous. The fox was tired of her worries. And their peaceful existence in this time was at stake. Naruto may have put them in this situation due to her own stupidity, but he was not going to abandon her in trouble. No matter how much Kurama resented her, cursed her, and was angry at her careless stupidity, he could not rule out the fact that he felt affection for her. It was impossible to hate her as much as he did before. He truly cared about her life and even her feelings. How sweet! You are ready to play a trained dog for me. Naruto could not hide behind sarcasm that she was touched. A lump settled in her throat. Her eyes burned from the coming tears. Her nose stung. Naruto closed her eyes, restoring her breath, which had become confused from the oversaturation of feelings. There were no tears left. Only her fingers trembled slightly. Time is running out. It's time to decide something. The warm fox chakra flowed lower from the back of her head, went down the spine, and ran through her arms and legs with a hot tickle, calming and warming. The corners of her lips lifted in a gentle smile. Sadness and melancholy no longer seemed so hopeless, and the feeling of fear all-consuming. She felt as if Kurama was nearby, hugging her. An incredible gesture for him. And very extreme. Suddenly someone would feel this flash of chakra? Oh gods! How she wanted to live without looking back at the past. And without the eternal tension and fear of stumbling. With a heavy sigh, she began to sort through the scrolls with missions. No one cancelled the work. And soon there will be more, as soon as Madara takes up his post. Perhaps Tobirama is now quietly experiencing everything inside himself, raging? Her heart sank painfully, and Naruto involuntarily squeezed the scroll in her hand. How petty the Uchiha was. She wanted to squeeze her hand not on the scroll, but on Madara's white neck. Until it crunched, succumbing to the suffocating pressure of her fingers. Only complicating everything, the parasite. The work was not going. But her thoughts were floating in circles. A closed one. Naruto pursed her lips in displeasure, and threw the scroll aside, starting to mope again. Don't complicate things. Just go and talk. Heart to heart. Frankly. One-on-one. Kurama hissed irritably, clicking his fanged mouth. How do you imagine this? Tobirama, meet Kurama and he will live with us. Is that so? Uzumaki boiled over, nervously grabbing the scroll. Almost. Take me to a secluded place and bare your soul. Or not just your soul. Maybe me. Or everything at once, but definitely me. Tobirama won't dare attack right away, he'll listen. Kyuubi didn't understand why Naruto was making everything so complicated, and also stirring up fears endlessly, interfering not only with his own life, but with his as well. If she gets him by the tails, things will not be sweet for them later. Everything is so simple for you. Naruto threw the long-suffering scroll again. Where can I find a secluded place within Konoha to let you out? She began to tear the fox's most stupid proposal to pieces. This idea was doomed to failure. You're sitting at the mission distribution. Choose one for yourself, and invite Tobirama to take a walk in the mountain range. You'll be alone with him. Almost. Everything will be decided there. And then together you will put pressure on Hashirama. The rest will have no choice but to accept your strength and power. Kurama reasoned, throwing ideas at Naruto. Otherwise he will continue to mark time in one place, struck by uncertainty for the first time in his life. Naruto chuckled skeptically. It sounded banal and simple. And perfect. Maybe she really was complicating things in vain? Should she just talk? Tell everything as it is, and not sit with her tails between her legs? Impetuously leaning forward, she began to pick through a small stack of scrolls, looking for one suitable for herself and Tobirama. One was found quickly. A B-rank mission. A weighty argument for taking a walk together. Not too dangerous, but not too easy either. And the presumed location of the target was right in the mountain range. Perfect. Naruto, smiling widely, jumped up from her seat, almost knocking over her chair, and ran headlong towards the quarter where the Senju lived. Where are you going? Madara intercepted her in the corridor. Away from you, Naruto snapped, barely staying on his feet. Don't worry, I'll be back before your inauguration. I'm just on a mission. Then you'll command me, but for now, excuse me, she rattled off, pulling her shoulder out of his tight grip. She also shoved the scroll under her nose for added persuasiveness. Fine, take a walk while you can, Madara grinned grimly, letting go of Uzumaki. And he followed her retreating figure with an envious look. From now on, he was chained to the village almost forever. Her heart was thundering in her chest. Her blood was boiling. Her limbs were trembling treacherously from excitement. Fear and anxiety were gripping her insides in a cold vice. It felt like she was about to jump into an abyss. Of course, she hadn't had to jump into an abyss, but she was sure that she would have felt the same way. Naruto stood in front of the Senju head's complex, shifting from foot to foot. Shouldn't Tobirama be next to his brother? Or should Tobirama live somewhere else now, because of Hashirama's wedding with Mito? Kami-sama, she knew nothing about the life and traditions of this era. But she definitely had to start from here. Her intuition told her. But how could she notify anyone that they had guests? Breaking into the house of a shinobi god without an invitation, especially a married one, was the height of disrespect. Naruto felt extremely stupid standing on the threshold of the house. And she thought that everything would be easy and simple. He would come, see and invite. Naruto? Mito came out from around the corner of the house, walking along the stone-paved path, emerging from the shadow of the emerald thickets. The vegetation here was lush, and probably grown by Hashirama. Hello, T, she greeted Hashirama's wife hesitantly, arching her back in a respectful bow. She did not understand how to behave correctly with her. Familiarity towards this woman seemed blasphemous. A potential great-grandmother, after all. Hello, Mito bowed back, straightened up with a friendly smile. The warmth of this gesture instantly drove away the awkwardness and confusion between them and shortened the distance. Naruto exhaled with relief and relaxed slightly. It would be much easier this way. Without all this ceremony. Do you want to go for a walk? Mito, approaching her potential relative, extended her hand. In the absence of Toka, her days became more gray and gloomy. Others were in no hurry to get closer to her. The status of the wife of the clan head and the princess of Uzumaki scared people away. Or, on the contrary, did such miracles to people that they tried their best to curry favor with her. Another time. I have business, Naruto said guiltily, looking at Mito's narrow and graceful palm. I need Tobirama. Could you tell me where to find him? Throwing away all formalities, she asked. Her heart sank in her chest. Oh, her gray eyes were full of understanding. He is on a mission in Uzushio. If everything goes smoothly, he should arrive in a week. Maybe earlier. After all, his speed. Seeing how Naruto's face began to lose color, Mito hurried to correct the situation. Yes, then let's go for a walk. Things are being postponed, Naruto perked up, throwing off the stupor of disappointment and all-consuming annoyance, hastening to smile. And, in order not to drown in her own despondency, which decided to crush her with its weight, she grabbed her namesake by the hand and pulled her towards the thicket from which she had emerged. Chapter 41. After she learned that Tobirama had gone to Uzushio, time slowed down. Bogged down in anticipation, her health worsened. She was again tormented from within by indecision and fear. Anxiety and tension only grew, preventing her from dragging out a calm existence. Life froze in this precarious suspended state. But the understanding settled down that only by telling Tobirama about herself and her secrets, she would be able to continue living calmly. And if he accepted her as she was, then, most likely, he would help solve the problem with Hashirama and Madara. Naruto, out of nerves, gnawed a couple of pencils. Monotonous work did not distract her. Madara, seeing her the next day in the office, joked about a ruined date. Accordingly, she did not appreciate the joke. But the Uchiha appreciated her ability to throw weapons. The pencil she had poured wine chakra into entered the door behind him as easily as a knife through butter. After exchanging angry glances, she once again buried her face in the questionnaires that the population had begun to hand in, and he, having dumped the morning correspondence on her desk, hurried away. And he never showed up again. Naruto was so angry and wound up for the first time. Her own feelings and experiences were exhausting, and she had no idea how to deal with it. At the end of the 7th day of Tobirama's absence, her nerves were starting to give out completely. Sitting in one place was becoming unbearable. Her soul and body were yearning to leave the village. And only the responsibilities that had fallen on her forced her to sit still. Give me a normal mission. Kagami flew into her office at full speed. Naruto blinked slowly, looking unfocused at the impudent boy. Now you will forget about the pale moth. The fox appeared in a red flash in her mind, predicting her near future. Kagami Uchiha paradoxically infuriated his vessel and caused strong emotions. Sometimes these same emotions blocked all her experiences. Kagami-kun, you can't do that, the girl scolded him, running out after him, cautiously glancing sideways at Naruto sitting at the table. Forgive him, she bowed, blushing with embarrassment. You can't weed the beds for days on end, the little Uchiha raged, dissatisfied with his lot. A waste of time, Shimura supported the little bastard. Danzo, pursing his lips in displeasure. There were quite a lot of children in her office. Kagami had dragged other kids along with him. Also unhappy with their lot. Shut up, both of you! Koharu apparently hissed quietly, throwing a threatening look at them. Naruto, remembering that the Konoha elders were now the same age as the third, found them and created a truly terrifying team against pests and weeds. Hiruzen, Danzo, Kagami, Hamura, and Koharu. Yes, be more polite, otherwise Naruto-san will ride off beds or rice fields again. Hiruzen supported the girl. He was hoping for a more constructive dialogue, and Kagami, as usual. And Shimura also chimed in. Naruto finally came to her senses, concentrating on the children who had now tumbled into her office. She felt that Kagami had the power to push her and bring her to her senses. Let's at least gouge out his eyes. As a lesson to others, Kurama asked plaintively, sensing the anger brewing in her chest. Well, it irritates him that there are too many Uchiha here. And everyone has a Sharingan to one degree or another. Naruto sighed heavily and mentally said a categorical no. Putting her elbows on the table and clasping her fingers, she lowered her chin onto her knuckles, watching the growing argument. Only Hamura remained silent, standing to the side, constantly adjusting his glasses that were slipping down the bridge of his nose. Nostalgia flared up in her chest. Once she had asked the old man third for a mission more serious than weeding the beds and catching escaped cats. Sasuke was silent, clearly supporting her impudent demand in his heart, and Sakura was angry, blushing and ashamed of her behavior. Naruto-san is not deaf and hears everything, stop whispering. She interrupted Kagami, who, without mincing words, was proving the injustice of the situation, accusing Naruto of exceeding his authority. And he understands. Children are eager to perform feats. To prove that they are strong and that they are underestimated in vain. They are in a hurry to become adults. And in her strictly personal opinion, they are in a hurry in vain. Give me another mission! Demanded the little Uchiha, turning to her again. The others standing behind him nodded their heads in agreement. Shimura even supported the idea with his voice. Work made a man out of a monkey, she wisely said and pulled out a couple of scrolls from the stack of D-rank missions, moving them to the opposite edge of the table. She really hoped that hard work would make them more human. Kagami a little polite, and the rest less treacherous, evil and dreaming of power. The little Uchiha immediately took them and opened them, skimming through them. The contents did not please him, judging by the upset expression on his face. Hey! The scrolls were thrown aside. This was enough for Naruto to flare up with anger. How this little red-eyed bastard irritated her. Did she really look like that from the outside? Do you think this is a different mission? Give me a different mission! The Uchiha slammed his palm down on the table in a not very threatening manner. He also puffed angrily, menacingly drawing his eyebrows together on the bridge of his nose. He was trying to release ki. If he were 10 years older, Naruto might have raised an eyebrow. Kagami was clearly trying to act cool and all-powerful. She had to be patient and not fall for the provocation, convincing herself that words would be enough for him, although someone's ass was asking for a spanking. What I can give you is a broom across the spine. Uzumaki voiced her far from pure thoughts in the hope that the threat would be taken seriously. She was as close as possible to fulfilling it. That's not fair. You and Tobirama never finished the argument. Uchiha reproached her, reminding her of the agreement. I found a way to send you to the garden without arguing. Naruto rubbed the bridge of her nose and straightened up. She was starting to show bloodthirsty inclinations towards some of the little Uchiha. "We can be much more useful." Danzo joined the argument, outraged by the current state of affairs no less than the little Uchiha. But he did not step forward, fearing her wrath. Still standing behind Kagami and Hiruzen's shoulder. "You are children. Learn new jutsu and do community service for the benefit of the village. Or play something." Naruto waved them off. She stubbornly did not want to send the children outside the village. If back then, in her time, it was dangerous, then even more so now. There was a high risk that not everyone would return. "We are not children!" exclaimed the Uchiha, offended by such a comparison. "We are at war. Was it good there, at war?" interrupted the angry Naruto mid-sentence. Kagami darkened and became embarrassed. "Sit and hone your skills, then I will let you go outside Konoha. Now I will sort through these papers, give you a mentor, then we will talk about more serious tasks." And demonstratively moved a stack of collected questionnaires towards herself, which were waiting for the hour of the great sorting. "But there is no war now." Uchiha did not know how to retreat. He had no brakes. Koharu began to tug at her teammate's sleeve, asking him to stop this argument. Naruto's eye began to twitch. What annoying kids! More precisely, the child. The others behaved more quietly and adequately. "Send them on a mission already, or they won't leave you alone." Toka entered the office, shaking her head in greeting. "I'm not going anywhere until you give me a higher-ranking mission." Shooting a glance at the woman from the Senju clan, the Uchiha immediately made some kind of decision, judging by the sly grin that spread across his lips. And he sat down right in front of the table. Proudly raised his chin and crossed his arms. Toka couldn't come closer. She and Naruto were separated by a crowd of children. "Kagami, you better run!" warned the extremely angry Uzumaki, getting up from her seat. The children tensed up. All except for the rebel, who was pleased with his prank. Fortunately, the broom was at hand. And Naruto unceremoniously put the threat into action. She swung a broom at the stubborn brat. "You'll be weeding my garden beds until you're 20. Earthworms will become your friends, and aphids will disappear faster than lightning at the sight of you." Kagami, as befits a self-respecting shinobi, dodged the blow, rolling to the side. The office was in a commotion. The struggle of interests grew into a real farce. Kagami hid behind everyone he could. Naruto stoically chased him with a broom, not thinking at all about what they would think of her. The steam was asking to get out. And she let it out. The children got underfoot, running away, just so that they wouldn't get hit instead of the Uchiha. Toka hurried to get out of the way of the enraged Naruto, climbing with her feet on the windowsill, watching this bacchanalia with a cheerful smile. Kagami was weaving around the office, successfully dodging punishment in the form of Naruto. In one moment, it was all over. Kagami, having finally gotten a broom to the soft spot, but not before running into the table and knocking over the untidy stacks of scrolls, was pushed out of the office. The others followed his example, afraid that they would get in trouble for supporting the little revolutionary who disagreed with the village policy, where children should remain children, and not run on dangerous missions. "Too many Uchiha per square meter," Naruto said irritably, slamming the door behind the children. She put the broom not far from the table. If Kagami was as stubborn as she was as a child, then there was a high probability that he would come every day, begging for a normal mission on a daily basis. And the little rascal did not understand normal language. The broom would help translate into a dialect accessible to him. "I have concerns that the Uchiha will soon seize power completely and utterly." Toka swung her legs over the windowsill, sat more comfortably, leaning her back against the frame. "You are also not thrilled about Madara's appointment as the head of the village?" Naruto turned the chair towards the window to make it easier to communicate with Tobirama's cousin. "However, an unexpected visit." "I would not say that it is so." Senju stretched her painted lips into a smile. She understood who Naruto meant by this, also. "Time will tell and put everything in its place." She said everything that she thought about this. "I trust Hashirama's choice." Since Tobirama trusted her, then she had nothing to worry about. Only Toka was not entirely sure that he would not regret his choice later. Naruto smiled back at her. At least someone in this village did not have problems with trust. And she perceived the events with an ease unusual for people here. Although I'm still in shock from what's happening. I went on a mission, so to speak, but it feels like I've been gone for several years, and the world has turned upside down. Tobirama allowed Uchiha to come to power! Toka got up from the windowsill and walked around the office. She stopped near the bookcase and started moving it. Naruto's eyes widened. What a thing! The office was now hers, and the girl from the Senju clan was behaving here as if she were at home. I need a drink. I can't wrap my head around this news without wine, she explained, feeling the bewilderment of the new owner of the office with her back. A bad example is contagious. Although Naruto could argue with this conclusion. It seemed that Senju's passion for alcohol was in his genes. Will you have some? His cousin opened another of Hashirama's hiding places, taking out a bottle from there. Naruto realized that she needed to check the office from top to bottom to destroy all the stashes of the elder Senju. Otherwise, one of the Senju would drink himself to death. Because only the Senju knew where the stashes were. Perhaps Madara. No, she refused, looking at the table full of documents and scrolls. Did you come here for free drinks? Naruto asked, still not understanding why the cousin of the Senju brothers had come to her. Certainly not to share her impressions of Madara's appointment. Hokage. This is a nice bonus, she uncorked the lid. Well, I just came from a mission. I came to Hashirama and found out the latest news. That he is no longer in charge of everything here. His lot is the hospital. And I need to report to Madara. So I came to look for Madara. And he sent me to you. He said that you are his assistant. You can hear what I will report. In a casual tone, she told the story that led her to this office. Senju returned the bookcase to its place, went to the window again and sat down on the windowsill. Naruto was glad that Senju was acting as if she had come to her not to hand in a report, but to have a heart-to-heart chat. Naruto was so simple that she took such behavior calmly. And it is easier to conduct a dialogue when you feel that you are on equal terms. She was already somewhat stunned by the fact that she would have to listen to a report on the past mission. And she would have to make decisions. Usually it was she who reported, not her. The position of Hokage, for which she was so actively preparing, assumed such an outcome of events, but life made its own adjustments. Just as Naruto made its own adjustments to what she wanted. And now, here she is, sitting as an important bigwig, making decisions almost at the Hokage level. A couple of weeks ago, Hashirama sent me on a mission to investigate a series of strange murders. Toka began her story from afar, washing down the especially long pauses in the narrative with wine. The murders are really strange. In that this symbol was found near each corpse. And Senju, picking around in her pants pocket, pulled out a small piece of paper folded in half and handed it to Naruto. Uzumaki took the outstretched sheet of paper, unfolding it. Her gaze fell on the drawn circle, inside of which was a triangle. What nonsense! Naruto snorted, but her insides were filled with anxiety involuntarily. It seemed like nothing out of the ordinary, but the symbol gave off something sinister. I think this is the signature of a KUB. Victims of KUB with particular cruelty. He moves along the borders. KUB shinobi, mostly mercenaries, haphazardly. Just kill. Toka stood up again, leaving the bottle on the windowsill. Walking back to the scroll rack, she pulled a large scroll from the top shelf and walked over to the table, unrolling what turned out to be a map. The last kills were here. A thin finger dropped to the border of the land of fire and rain. On the coast. It's at a crossroads. There's a port village here. Shinobi often appear here. From water and whirlpool. Got it. I'll pick up people, Uzumaki frowned. An unpleasant feeling settled inside like a heavy sediment. She glanced at the piece of paper again. The symbol seemed familiar at second glance. You saw the corpses, right? What weapon do you think they were killed with? A bad feeling was spreading in her chest. The drawing on the paper was becoming very unnerving. The more she paid attention to it, the worse it became. It's hard to say. The heart of all the corpses was pierced by a spear. Right through. The other wounds on the body were not fatal, but they brought a lot of pain and suffering. These could have been cuts from a kunai, a sword, a scythe. It's hard to judge. There are no normal autopsy experts there. Senju looked at the map, starting to frown, apparently feeling the tension that was slowly but surely constraining Naruto. Yes, he is SDSD. Naruto, based on the information received, mentally assigned the mission rank S, and took a stack of questionnaires, where the most powerful combat units were sorted. She also noted to herself that she would need a medic to accompany her, no lower than Sakura's level at the age of 16. She had to send Toka to Hashirama so that they could assign a medic. From the pile, she chose Nara Shikatsu, the eldest son of the head of the Nara clan. Shikamaru's probable great-grandfather. He would be the brains of the whole team. And shadow techniques would come in handy. Hyuga Toru, a genius from a side branch of the Byakugan clan. He would serve not only as eyes and a landmark, but also as a striking force. Soft palm style and the enemy is out of the fight. Sarutobi Sasuke Hiruzen's father long-range attacker. Inuzuka Hitomi will help to find the trail of the killer. And good support in battle. Where is Tobirama? Toka suddenly asked. Her brother was not within the village. Hashirama muttered something briefly about a mission of special importance. In Yuzushio, Naruto glanced at the map. A loud click sounded in both of their heads. Toka noticeably tensed up next to her. We need to send him a warning to join the squad. He left alone. Please go to Hashirama, ask for a medic of a high enough level, Naruto commanded. Her face was uncharacteristically stern and gloomy, her voice rang with steel. Toka nodded in agreement. And Naruto began to write a message. For Tobirama, still squinting at the drawn symbol that was haunting her. A scythe? A stake or a spear piercing the heart. The symbol of a circle, with a triangle inside, only drawn not on paper, but on the ground. Particularly brutal murders. Clearly a psycho. Sarutobi Nara. Jashin suddenly popped into her head. Understanding fell on her like icy needles of fear. Naruto choked under the pressure of an unexpected guess. Shit. Naruto cursed. Her face turned pale. I'll do it myself. Warn Madara that I'm on a mission. She jumped up from her chair so that he fell, almost crushing the feet of the discouraged Toka. But you're alone. Toka protested, who had seen what kind of shinobi Naruto was going to send her on a mission. Such a team, with the right balance of forces, could easily storm the Fire Daimyo's palace. What could one petite blonde do against a particularly cruel SDSD? Almost nothing. I'm alone, Naruto said harshly. And if we're lucky, with Tobirama, I'll intercept him at the border. Her hands were shaking. She was shaking all over. Kakuzu was still okay. And someone who possessed the same power as Haiden. She really hoped that the paths of Ub and Tobirama would not cross before she met Tobirama. And I can handle one scoundrel. And Naruto, dropping everything, jumped out the window, and immediately rushed to the exit of the village. Every second counts. Delay could cost lives. Tobirama might figure out the Jashinist trick, and only when it's too late. Only Asuma-sensei's sacrifice helped to obtain useful information about the immortal scoundrel Haiden, a worshipper of the Dark God. Here the outcome will be similar. Senju will connect all the facts only when he is already on the hook. If she does not find a follower of this cult earlier, or Tobirama, with Kurama behind her back, she will be able to deal with this maniacal SDSD one-on-one. Madara, Toka did not find the Uchiha right away. He was elusive. The upcoming post of Hokage and the current post of the police chief were tearing him apart, forcing him to be everywhere at once. And he also drove her into a kind of trepidation. She was timid in front of him, feeling insecure. For the first time, she was in such close contact with the head of the clan with whom they had previously been at odds. What? He looked up at Hashirama's cousin. She looked worried and gloomy. But then he lost all interest in her, switching back to work. It seems your assistant got into trouble, Senju smiled nervously, the feeling of discomfort growing. Madara's company was oppressive, especially when they looked at her as if she were some kind of misunderstanding. But she felt that she needed to notify the Uchiha. If it seems so, then don't waste my time and sort out your fantasies yourself. The busy Uchiha cut her off without taking his eyes off the papers. Senju was offended by this state of affairs, pursing her lower lip in displeasure. Indifference and apathy the Uchiha were irritating. How could he be a leader if he didn't care about the villagers who were in trouble? Well, not yet. It was just a matter of time. Toka clenched her fists and gritted her teeth, continuing to try to get through to Madara. She went to catch the abalone. She continued to show miracles of persistence, trying to get through to what was in Madara's chest instead of a heart. Or at least to his mind. She'll cope. Madara didn't see anything dangerous in this. The Uchiha didn't understand only one thing. Why was Toka Senju, who had almost no contact with Naruto, worried about her? Or was this woman from the Senju clan as kind-hearted as her cousin Hashirama? I'm not sure. To catch this bastard, she assembled this team, and even asked for a high-level medic. I doubt that she is able to cope with the one she went to catch. Approaching Madara, she put the papers in front of his nose, deciding to approach the issue from a different angle. Madara measured Toka with a withering look, but then still looked through the questionnaires. Indeed, the team was selected at a high level, which meant that the criminal was especially dangerous. He was not going to doubt Naruto's analytical abilities. He had to learn to trust her. After all, now she would be his assistant. If she decided so, then so it is. If it will be. If she went alone to catch some bloodthirsty psycho, she may not return, trivially overestimating herself. Insufferable girl, Madara grinned grimly. Not a woman, but a disaster. On his head. And Tobirama's head. Only Hashirama is out of the case. He has his own Uzumaki for troubles. Who? Hashirama entered the office. The smile glued to his face began to slide as soon as he felt the tension frozen in the office. And he saw an equally gloomy Toka. What happened? Tobirama is in danger. Toka voiced her thoughts and quickly explained in what, giving a short report from her reconnaissance mission. Hashirama darkened. And Naruto. Ah. So that's where the dog is buried. That's why Naruto dropped everything and ran away. Toka was not worried about Naruto, but about relative. Madara would say that he doesn't care about Tobirama. But the mission that run of a Senju left on. Just like he would say that he doesn't care about Naruto, but then again. He cares. You're in charge, Hashirama and Madara said in unison, then looked at each other, coming to the same decision. Toka couldn't find anything to say, shocked to the core by what had just happened. The affairs of the village and the Senju clan had just been dumped on her. Probably the hospital as well, since Hashirama was now the head of medicine. She only had the strength to blink in surprise and breathe. You can handle it. Hashirama patted her on the shoulder and, smiling encouragingly, turned to Madara. Shall we go? The Uchiha nodded. They both left the office, leaving Toka alone. That's irresponsible. Senju called after them, finding a definition for what was happening. But if they heard her, they didn't show it. The two silhouettes quickly disappeared into the shadows of the corridor. What should I do? What if there's an attack? Or if the daimyo comes? She asked the void, now feeling not only anxiety, but also panic at the responsibility that had fallen on her. And what the hell was going on outside the village? Chapter 42. The wind whistled in her ears. Branches whipped her arms, legs, and face, scratching her skin. The gathering twilight was on her heels. Fear drove her forward like a pack of hounds drives a rabbit. It blinded her. It tried to deprive her of her mind and succumb to the prickly embrace of panic. Naruto rushed forward without looking back, spitting on any precautions, the radio chakra as a beacon. The surest way to find Tobirama is to make herself known by means available to her. Senju Jr.'s sensory abilities are very unique. He will sense her from afar. He must sense her. The idea, of course, had a huge minus. In addition to Tobirama, you could attract a bunch of problems. A smaller minus is a waste of chakra. And if these two minuses are superimposed on each other, a real ass can await her. Depending on the strength of the enemy. Although what problems can we talk about? Naruto was now on the verge when she could boldly open herself to the world and show the other side of herself, hairy, red and fanged. That same ass, seeing this, can run away and return only with reinforcements. The main thing is that the one she was looking for did not run away. Or even worse, attack. You know, we have every chance of becoming friends. Kurama interrupted her chaotic thoughts. He had also thought long and hard about how to help his Jinchuriki painlessly adapt those around him to his person. That sounds encouraging. Uzumaki smiled weakly. She was not capable of more. The nervous tension had gripped her too tightly. All her worries were about to burst like a soap bubble. And this would either bring long-awaited peace and relief, or entail an avalanche of troubles. And you won't even ask why I decided so? The fox gradually poured his chakra into her channels, carefully intertwining their energies, gaining more access to the world around her. This way he would be able to sense danger in advance. His sensory abilities were much more unique than pale moths. Because you love me? Naruto tried his luck. The fox is not as sentimental as she is. And he would never admit his feelings to her. She could only guess how much the nine-tailed demon had grown attached to her. Silly! A booming and thunderous laugh deafened her, drowning out the whistling wind in her ears. In addition to our affection for you, there is one more thing that unites Moth and me. You're a fool! Naruto snorted. Talking to Kurama smoothed out the discomfort from the anxiety that was dragging her insides down. For this, she was immensely grateful to him. With him, all the sorrows and hardships were now easier to bear. Uchiha! The demon rumbled contemptuously. Naruto smiled wider now, mentally rolling her eyes. What was true was true. Kyubi and Tobirama were very hostile towards the red-eyed clan. This brought them closer. Leave the poor Uchiha alone, Naruto muttered. Let's see how you talk when Madara puts you on a chain. Or he wants to pull me out, having received more strength and power. The fox reasonably noted, assuming that sooner or later Madara would finally go off the rails, and open his mouth at his tails, again striving to bring to life the eternal Tsukiyomi. Think for yourself. Now we are stronger than the founders. Especially if they are alone. The peak of their strength comes at the moment when Madara attacks the village, enslaving you. Then they would inspire fear. Until that moment there are somewhere 6 to 8 years. Naruto did not rule out such an outcome of events. Madara anyway was alarming. It was not a fact that the idea with the Hokage would help the Uchiha adapt to the world, casting aside all his insidious plans. Then why were you shaking so? Kurama was perplexed. His Jinchuriki was afraid to open up. And she was still afraid, he felt it. But now he did not understand the motives of her fear and worries. By opening up, we will cause them fear. And fear, as a rule, blinds. Having entered into a fight with them, we will have to fight to the fullest. They are dangerous to us. And not even by force, but because they have more combat experience. They are wiser. More cold-blooded. If they work as a well-coordinated team, they will drive us into a corner. We will not expect ceremonies from them. I am ready to listen, understand and forgive, but they... I am unlikely to be so lucky a second time. She tried to avoid this topic, because it was depressing. These thoughts gave off a chilly sense of hopelessness. She wanted a peaceful solution to the conflict. Such shocking news needed to be prepared for slowly and carefully. She simply needed to be patient and develop the right tactics. Then she would be able to live peacefully in Konoha, enjoying life. She would tell and show Tobirama everything first. Right when they crossed paths, she would lay everything out in all honesty. If she had the courage. She had already begun to prepare Madara for this news. And with Hashirama, she hoped that he, seeing that Madara and Tobirama were loyal to her, would accept her, giving her a chance. And the population did not need to know that there were demons inside her that were more terrible than the Uchiha. Kurama only sighed heavily. People love to complicate everything, especially his Jinchuriki. Apparently, she was simply bored with life. Naruto, get ready! Kurama's ears perked up, sensing someone else's chakra nearby. Powerful. Strong. More like a thunderstorm that was about to quickly overtake them, crashing down on their heads like a storm. Wah! The rest of the question was lost. Pain flared in his left shoulder. Tobirama was finally returning. The sea had been crossed, the port village was left behind. He was not going to stop for the night. His soul was yearning to go home as never before. And he was not going to resist its urge. He had already spent a lot of energy fighting his own claims. It had exhausted and weakened him to a sufficient degree. In this unequal battle, his heart had finally won. Emotions prevailed over reason. And his treacherous heart whispered to use Hiraishin, being so far from Konoha. To his own horror, the decision was growing stronger and stronger in him. Impatience was burning. He wanted to put an end to this issue and stop balancing on the edge. Only common sense assured him that he could overdo it and get a good exhaustion. At best. At worst, a fatal outcome awaited him. Tobirama came to a compromise on this issue. When he was at least half a day's journey from Konoha, he would use the instant movement technique, saving a little time. Gritting his teeth, he simply rushed forward, ignoring the world around him. Concentrating on the flows of chakra surrounding him, which helped him avoid trouble. Feeling a particularly strong accumulation of energy, he went around obstacles, muffling his own, to become invisible to others. This saved not only time, but also energy. It was easier to go around the enemy than to go straight ahead, where you would inevitably have to engage in combat. There were always enough bandits in the forests, especially near trade routes. Sufficiently experienced travelers muffled their chakra, wanting to be invisible, creating an element of surprise, or, like him, trying to avoid problems. Inexperienced ones ended up victims due to the inability to take control of chakra flows. In the dead of night, when the sky had been black for several hours and was shining with myriads of stars, he caught a familiar chakra on the periphery of his sensory abilities. Against the background of the other, weak and insignificant flashes, this one shone like a signal fire. A raging flame. And it emanated a scorching power. For a moment, Tobirama doubted his own adequacy. Apparently, he was thinking about her too much. And fatigue was taking its toll. He had been moving towards home for 2 days without rest. That's why he was imagining things. But no. A familiar warmth enveloped his nerves, mixed with something new that unnerved him. Lately, he had been feeling a strange force in her hearth. If he closed his eyes and gave free rein to his imagination, then the chakra Naruto was yellow. As rich and bright as the color of her hair. Liquid gold of the sun's rays. Until her hearth filled up, fully restored. Then red veins appeared. Burning like lava. And the veins filled all the channels, painting the shining yellow with a red pattern. It looked abnormal. Like a pathology. All this time, Senju wrote off this anomaly as an innate feature. All Uzumaki had unique chakra. Mito, for example, had a ringing chakra. Like chains made of precious metal. Now the scarlet chakra seemed alien and alive. These two energies were tightly intertwined, forming an incredible combination of power, and they shone invitingly. And if there is a fool who flies to this quintessence of fire and sun, hoping to snatch a warm spot for himself, he will inevitably burn out on the approach. Uzumaki Naruto really was incredibly strong with her chakra fully charged. But that wasn't what worried him. What worried him was that she was here. And it wasn't a figment of his imagination. Tobirama, without a second's hesitation, formed the Thunder God seals, grouping himself. Uzumaki, after all, moved fast enough that he could catch her the moment she jumped. And that's what happened. He materialized next to her while she was in the air. Grasping her left shoulder tighter, he abruptly turned her to face him, his other arm wrapped around her waist, pressing her tighter to himself. Uzumaki tensed in his arms and slashed her with an angry look, clearly mistaking what was happening for an attack. Anger turned to bewilderment. Bewilderment to relief. and Naruto relaxed in his arms exactly when their feet touched the ground. The demonstration of power was over. The red chakra, as if trying to hide or become less noticeable, began to disappear. The scarlet clot of energy near the hearth, blazing with a bright flash in farewell, as if winking at him, went out, leaving behind only thin threads entwining its flow. It worked! Uzumaki smiled, taking the flow of chakra under her not particularly sensitive control. No matter how she tried to suppress her energy, it did not work very well. It still flickered, but not as terrifyingly brightly. Tobirama grinned, burying his nose in the blonde crown, understanding her plan. What an arrogant and risky woman. He hugged her even tighter, pressing her thin figure to his broad chest, enjoying her presence. Naruto hugged him back, wrapping her arms around his neck. And she rose on her tiptoes, pulling herself up. Her hot breath touched his chin. The tip of her nose tickled the right corner of his lips. Senju took a sharp breath, everything inside him twisted in sweet anticipation. The blood in his veins boiled. Stop! She exhaled sharply and pulled away, heartlessly shattering all his expectations. And she even broke away from his embrace, taking a step back, touching his left shoulder. Did you attach the Hiraishin mark to me? When? Naruto was breaking all his records for unpredictability. He thought that now they would move on to the topic that had just come between them, preventing them from living peacefully, but first they would enjoy each other's presence. It was obvious, wasn't it? Do you know the principle of the Thunder God's seal? Sensing that a scolding was coming, he decided to ask a tricky question in return. Few knew the principle of this jutsu. Usually, those who solved the secret inevitably died. Naruto couldn't be that observant, or could she? I know. My father was the best user of this jutsu. I tried to master it. Naruto needed the place where the seal was with her fingers, being on the verge of rage. This discovery shocked her in a bad way. When did you put it on me? Impossible, Tobirama tensed up. Naruto not only broke all the magic of the moment, but also reminded that there was still no trust between them. What fragile feelings between them, which are so easy and simple to break. How your distrust irritates me, Uzumaki growled, nervously scratching the mark, burning him with an offended look. Wait. Do I have a seal at home too? She remembered the incident with Tsuchigumo. She did not see how Senju appeared. He just appeared out of nowhere in the middle of her apartment. And then he returned her home with the help of the God of Thunder. She just did not attach any importance to it. She was agitated and tired. Tobirama crossed his arms over his chest, glaring coldly, carefully pulling a mask of frosty indifference onto his face. The blood in his veins grew cold, and instead of a pleasant languor, he was threatened with indigestion and unpleasant aftertaste from what was happening settled in his stomach like a pile of stones, as well as a premonition of a not particularly pleasant shock. A precaution, Tobirama said calmly, although he wanted to take and shake her. He always loses control of himself next to her. And he is thrown into heat, then into cold. And if this irritates you, then let's finally sort everything out here and now. You came here for this, right, or am I wrong? Naruto froze, blinking in fear. As if this thought caught her by surprise, scaring her half to death. Is she really not ready to confess to him, and their meeting was a pure accident, and he takes a lot on himself? And also explain how you know how Hiraishin works. Did your father steal my developments? Tobirama was the only user. He had every right to accuse her parent of theft. And Naruto spoke so confidently that there was no doubt she was not lying. Her father owned the Flying Thunder God. He did not steal. He mastered your legacy. And improved it, Uzumaki admitted, lowering her head. Now or never. But I stole your shadow clone technique when I was 12, she smiled bitterly, and sat down right where she stood. Against her will, her body was overcome by weakness mixed with anxiety. Her legs threatened to fail her at any moment. No matter how brave she tried, she still felt insanely excited. Determination melted like snow in the summer heat. Tobirama stood where he stood, nailed to the spot by this confession. He did not understand. Completely. Naruto was talking pure nonsense. How could she steal his legacy at 12, when he invented shadow cloning when she was 20? And also, where I come from, you are 70 years older than me. She raised her head timidly, looking from under her brows at the frozen Tobirama. It was difficult to understand his emotions. The night reliably hid them from her. And 50 years, or more, how deeply dead. I am from Konoha, since the founding of which I have passed the 7th decade, and at the end of the shocking rebuke she smiled sadly. From the outside, it looks absolutely incredible and absurd. And it sounds like a ridiculous lie. You claim that you're from the future? Senju put together the disparate facts. He was filled with skepticism. The thought settled in his brain that he died relatively young. And he didn't have too much time left to live. Yes. I was preparing to become the 7th Hokage. I went to the archives. And I found a scroll. Fuinjutsu. I decided that I could decipher it. But it was so nonsense that I just decided to check what would happen if I poured chakra. And I poured it. Later I fell on your head. Naruto continued melancholically, feeling terribly stupid. Admitting my own stupidity to a recognized genius. Not to mention the fear of not only being rejected, but also becoming an enemy of my own village. You were preparing to become Hokage? Senju mentally allowed for the possibility that she really was from the future. A lot of things fit together, no matter how far-fetched it might seem from the outside. But a female Hokage, especially one like her? Konoha should have been left in ruins. He didn't deny her sharp mind and obvious beginnings of common sense. But Naruto was sometimes naive, illogical, and very impulsive. And now she proved to him that her own self-confidence had become a fatal mistake for her. But she was an excellent speaker. She brainwashed him just fine. What? Naruto raised her head. Anxiety faded against the background of indignation. Tobirama openly doubted her abilities. Good. Challenge accepted. If necessary, she will prove it not only with words, but also with deeds. I went through the war, saved the world from complete destruction, returned one negligent avenger to the village. Should I continue the list of my merits? And anyway, Hashirama was the first Hokage. You are the second. And your grandniece is the 5th. Oh yeah? Your student is Hiruzen, the 3rd. Uzumaki carried on. Your brother is, well, you get the idea. And you? Vain. Hiruzen is uninitiative. Tsunade is an alcoholic and a gambler, and how could I be worse? She fixed him with a blazing, belligerent gaze. Tobirama was taken aback. He was vain? But the sting of resentment faded against the background of the information she had revealed. In fact, she was telling him the course of the future. From a logical point of view, he was not supposed to know this. If he tried to change anything, then any action could shift the flow of time and change Naruto's past, and obviously, not yet realized life completely. This is dangerous. Naruto, can you keep your mouth shut or what? He harshly stopped the continuous flow of information with a stinging question. She slammed her mouth shut, choking in indignation. You shouldn't tell me all this. I have no right to know what will happen. He immediately explained the reason for his reaction, softening. Disappointment filled him to the brim. A quick analysis of the information that had fallen on him threw up unconsoling conclusions. If all this was true, it meant that she would soon have to return. Naruto was just a temporary anomaly. Therefore, she drew a clear line between them, keeping them at a distance from each other. Of the two, she turned out to be the more practical and reasonable. Their rapprochement would hurt them both. And the closer they were, the more devastating the pain would be. This thought dug into his heart like a deadly blade, piercing the unfortunate organ through and through. Disappointment, grief, melancholy, anger, this was all he could feel at the moment. And fragile and tender feelings were corroded by inevitable hopelessness. Holy gods, why did he allow his heart to feel? The prospect of saying goodbye to her forever was slowly destroying him. The fear of the upcoming loss settled in his chest, grinning greedily. It turned out to be even more unbearable than suffering from unrequited feelings. All these emotions were too Too much for him. What difference does it make? It will never be the same again, she said, upset. You see, I allowed something that changed the world forever, and everything that was there now does not matter. Sighing convulsively, Naruto looked at him uncertainly, nervously biting her lower lip. Wait, do you admit that I can be from the future? Her gaze was filled with hope. She tensed up, waiting for his answer. I admit it, he said without thinking. This fit perfectly into the picture of what was happening. She was not afraid of them and clearly knew a lot, although she referred to rumors. Things that she could not explain. And the barrier in her head protected nothing other than the future from their interference. Whatever this seal was, it protected valuable knowledge from being declassified. So well that the Uzumaki clan could not break the protection. He would have to digest this fact for a long time. Because it was incredible. Incomprehensible. However, he was not going to deny the interest that had arisen. The topic was worthy of his attention and careful study. And Naruto, the one who could open the curtain of secrecy. If this was not false speech and an attempt to manipulate him, playing on his feelings. Solid doubts. No certainty. It drove him crazy. And caused a migraine. A cold mind constantly fought with a burning love. Against the background of an internal conflict, the soul bled from the feeling of an inevitable end. And he was ready to believe her, contrary to the arguments of common sense, if only this dispute would stop tormenting him. Tobirama cowardly agreed to take the least path of resistance, rejecting all logic and doubts. The pain that was tearing his heart alive loosened its torturous grip. The foolish heart suddenly seized on her words, hoping to get rid of the rolling hopelessness. Naruto exhaled with relief and relaxed, shaking her shoulders freely and effortlessly. Only the previous carelessness and cheerful optimism were in no hurry to appear again. Now I have nowhere to return to. She sighed sadly, answering a question he had not asked. Tobirama was selfishly happy. She would stay with him. He would help her survive the loss of the past, do everything possible so that she would remember her former life without this suffocating melancholy and sadness. Senju would be ready to shatter into pieces in his desire to make her happy. Here he was a moment ago feeling sorry for himself, being the most miserable person in the world, not understanding how to deal with what had befallen him, and now, closing the distance between them, he felt inspiring inspiration and intoxicating joy. The only thing that upset him was that his happiness stood on the ruins of her grief. You have somewhere to return to. His tone rang from excessive confidence in his own words. Tobirama knelt down, carefully covering her palms and squeezing them encouragingly. With his thumbs, he gently stroked her protruding knuckles, feeling how her hands were trembling slightly. Naruto intertwined her fingers with his, relaxing slightly. Gentle touches almost erased all worries, dispelled fears. The first stage was behind her. At the transition to the second stage, Senju knocked her off her train of thought. It still caught her off guard, causing her to be a little embarrassed and surprised. Tobirama slowly touched her lips with his, sending pleasantly stinging sparks through her body. Her chest ached sweetly. Soft warmth enveloped every cell of her body. And Naruto desperately clung to these sensations, more penetratingly and deeply, trying to turn the sparks into a blazing fire. How she wanted to dissolve in him completely. This is what she so badly desires. Naruto emerged from sweet oblivion when her lips began to tingle with the short stubble of his chin. And she distantly noticed that her pussies were flowing lower. Smiling embarrassedly, Naruto pulled away slightly, lowering her gaze to their hands. Tobirama exhaled convulsively, and she would like to interpret this as barely noticeable disappointment. Tobirama's support and warm feelings almost inspired her with the long-awaited peace. Almost. Would he be as positive if he met her demon? The mentally asked question made him smile sadly. This alerted Senju and made him tense up. He froze in anticipation, not really understanding what to expect. Naruto closed her eyes and tried to breathe deeply and evenly, gathering strength to tell about Kurama. Or maybe it would be better to show rather than tell. She needed to dump on Tobirama here and now everything she had kept secret. Then she could breathe easy. And if she was lucky, without bitterness and regrets, for as long as her heart desired. Dawn was breaking in the sky, chasing away the blackness of the night. "Tell me," he asked quietly, intuitively feeling that she needed to speak out. She had kept these secrets for too long. Tried to be as careful as possible. That's how much effort it took her not to interfere in what was happening, knowing that some events had led to changes in her future. Apparently, not a very bright one. Senju remembered that she had talked about the war. "Everything. I'll tell you everything, but later." And the wave of relief was followed by tension again. Naruto sighed heavily, looking up from their intertwined hands to his face. "There is one more small. But," Naruto chuckled nervously. She was brazenly downplaying it. "A very, very big. But." She felt Tobirama tense up against her skin. He mentally braced himself, preparing for another shock. "I feel like your but isn't that small." Senju frowned, peering into Uzumaki's worried face. "Nah. It's big. Very." And she tried to find the right words to smooth over the predictably negative effect of meeting Kurama. "You should have felt long ago that not everything is so smooth with my chakra." She began from afar, delaying the inevitable end. Tobirama nodded in agreement. It was her chakra that he had been thinking about before they met in the middle of the forest. This made him once again turn his inner gaze to the streams of chakra that surrounded them. "I have a second source of power," she began carefully. "And it's, how can I say it? Alive. And intelligent." She carefully chose her words, dedicating Senju to her main secret, not taking her eyes off his concentrated face. Tobirama frowned even more. Naruto threatened to stun him again. And yes. As confirmation, the red veins flared up, growing. Now this other energy was pulsating, blinking scarlet. So, fear gripped her throat, suddenly flaring up in her with renewed vigor. The prepared words were stuck in her throat. "Wait." Senju hastily lowered her hands, pressing her palms to the ground and closing his eyes, completely concentrating on the area around him. Naruto obediently froze, catching her breath. Several small lights and two large ones flared on the periphery of her consciousness. The large ones surrounded the small ones, driving them into a corner. "Kagami, Danzo, Hiruzen, Hamura, and Koharu are there. We have encountered two opponents many times superior in strength," he reported, opening his eyes and explaining to her the abrupt change of topic. Naruto's face distorted with horror. It was the first time he had seen her so pale and scared. Her fear was nothing compared to what he had seen when they were hunting Kakuzu. Or exposing Tsuchigumo. "Oh my." Naruto slammed her fist into the ground, clenching her jaw. "Where?" There was so much panic hidden in such a short question that Tobirama couldn't help but feel its echoes in his own soul. "Gods, I hope it wasn't him who found them," she pleaded, stretching out into a tense string. Taking Uzumaki's hand, he immediately moved towards where he felt the sources of chakra. It was better not to delay. "Who is he?" he demanded. "I'll tell you on the way," she promised.